That concludes the service. Just to be. Imagine what it would be like to just be. To be with what is. How would you describe it? To just be. When you're able to drop into that, to be aligned, to be atoned, to be present to source, to be present to breath, of being breathed, at rest, at peace, what's it like? Describe it.
Restful.
Restful. Peaceful.
Free.
Free. Freer. Joyful. Grateful. Stressless. Centered. Balanced.
Fun.
More fun.
Yeah.
Would this be okay with you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what stops us? What stops you?
Anxiety.
Thoughts. Any thought, not questioned, any thought, not discerned, any thought, not objectively related to, any thought that I fall subjected to will shift me out of heaven. So then heaven, hell, heaven, hell, heaven, hell, just that quick. It's like, so we come to church, we get centered and balanced, just be, and all this hugs and love, and then we'll go downstairs to have our potluck meal that you've provided, and there won't be something there that'll suit you. After all I've done for God. So this is what we're dealing with. So let's get a little of that out of our system, okay? You ready? So today, this morning, we'll crawl out of a few skins. We'll just shed a few skins so that we can just be a little bit more being today. So raise your right hand, put it right on your forehead, and just be upset. Why me? I've told them 100 times I'm gluten-free. Why don't somebody care for my needs? They know I don't eat sugar. They've made me fat. Bringing all this sugar in here. So we have a little work to do. Maybe?
Yeah.
So my teachers say, yeah. You know how you know you have some work to do? You woke up. So if you have a pulse, there's a little something to do. But what if we could go about this work with a little less drudgery?
Yeah.
With a little more, it's part of my human learning process. It's part of my humanity. It's part of the humanity. So then in unity, what does unity teach? There's one power and one presence in all the universe. And it is not her. She did not get that memo. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with her. And as soon as she apologizes, I will consider it. So, incongruent. Out of alignment. And then this notion that we can be one without the other. This notion that we're going to be at peace all the time. So what's the reality of it? Anybody here at peace all the time? Please raise your hand if you are, because we're going to plan your ascension this afternoon. And we'll film it, of course, then all the prosperity woes will be over. So nobody's at peace all the time. It would be like trying to have an inhale without an exhale. So peace rises and then passes. And then upset rises and passes. And then, oh, I just love you and can't help it, will rise and pass. And then, I don't love you and can't help it, will rise and pass. So what would it be like to make room for all of it? So to accept it as it is. You don't have to love it or like it. You don't have to condone it, vote for it. Just whatever is arising now. And the only power I have in the whole world is how I'm going to relate to what's arising now. So who holds your power? Who holds your power? Some of you are raising your hand, pointing at you, so turn to somebody and tell them, hey, I hold the power. I hold the power for my own peace. I hold the power for my own peace. So this is like what you've heard me say. For those of you that have watched some of these tapings, it's like we check into Hell Hotel and forget that we have the key, that we can check out. And although we claim we don't like drama, it just ain't so. It's so alluring, right? It's so alluring, like to go into the temptation of what she's doing, what he's saying, and what's that look on her face mean, and what's that tone about over there. So if you take anything away from today, take away a few things you can do when you notice you've checked into Hell Hotel to check out quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker. And one of them is to, now take a big deep breath, and shut the doors, honey, because this is where they may try to fly out of here. Stay in your own business. What happens in your life? What happens to your spirit? What happens to your creativity, to your innovative ideas, your dreams, your visions, your goals for your life? When you leave the only life you have to live and get over in theirs and try to live theirs. What happens to your life? Answer it out loud.
Hell. Crumbles.
It shatters, it crumbles, it's stressful. It's worrisome. Now, what's it like when others are in your life trying to get you to live the life they want you to live? What's that like? Anger, frustration, irritation. Well, these are two reasons to stop doing this. Both aggravate me. Both irritate me, both frustrate me, both stress me, distress me. Then if I want other people to stay in their business, whose job is it to stay in my business? Anybody willing? As a little practice today. Now you'll catch it, like even here, it'll go out to be like, I wonder if she's going to follow up on that. I wonder if he's going to do what he said. I wonder what's in front of me. So to change that, impossible. To change this, maybe. Impossible, possible. So to keep trying to change them is like trying to teach a cat to bark. Can you relate? No, you say, oh, I would never do that, Martha. I'm not crazy. I'm like, yes, If you've got a pulse, you're crazy. I have a pulse, I'm crazy. So it won't look like sitting over a cat trying to get them to bark for some of us. Some of us are still trying to train cats. Anybody here with cats? How does that training go for you? Go with that. And then we go, now you should do this, and you should do that, and you shouldn't do this, and you shouldn't do that. And I want you to do this, and I need you to do this, and I don't ever want you to do that. Meow. I want you to do this. I don't want you to do that. You should do this. I need you to do that. Got it? Meow. And wonder why we're despaired, depressed, exhausted. Versus living in relationship to this that is turned all around. So the second I think you should do it, who should do it? That's where all the power is. The second I think I need you to do something, how can I turn that around? I need me to. And I don't need it from you. You are not my source. They are not your source. See if you can say it out loud. They are not my source.
They are not my source.
They're not my source.
They're not my source.
So I don't need them to do what they're not doing. They shouldn't be doing what they're not doing. They should be doing what they are doing. Now you don't have to like it or love it, but to argue with what is happening argues with reality. And when you argue with reality, who loses? 100% of the time. So there's another reason not to do that. Like I can bring less stress to myself by less arguing with what is. Less arguing with what is. So our little song about I am wonderful, I am wonderful. What's that feel like when you say that? What's the opposite of wonderful? Knucklehead? Let's just find something we can work with.
Terrible.
Are you a knucklehead sometimes?
Yes.
All together?
Yes.
Yes! Now in here, in this self-realization, lies freedom. Lies freedom. It's absolutely true I'm wonderful. It's also absolutely true that I'm the opposite of it. If you believe what Unity teaches, which is quantum thinking, there's one power and one presence. I'm Alpha and Omega. So I'm both and.
Beginning and end.
I'm both and. So I am wonderful and not so wonderful. Sometimes. Now where's the pain? So then I blame. I'm a blamer. Well, I blame. It's a part of my human learning process. We blame out of these knee-jerk, instinctual, patterned ways of being. And we don't have to live in blame. So what's the opposite of blaming? Owning it. Looking at self, taking responsibility for self. So sometimes I blame and I displace responsibility, and at times I can own it and take responsibility for it. What would it be like to live in both of that? Powerful, empowered. Get a sense of it in your body. Of being both and. So then when somebody says, hey, you're unkind. How dare you? I'll show you unkindness. I'll teach you kindness. Here's the look. So we're perpetuating in the world the very thing we claim we want to end in the world, unkindness. Out of these knee-jerk, both and. Now, if you didn't mind being seen as unkind, who would you be? If you didn't mind being seen as unkind. If you had integrated that piece of you. Empowered. How would you respond to somebody calling you unkind? If you didn't mind, if you owned it, if you had integrated this piece, how would you react and respond to somebody calling you unkind?
Non-defensively.
Less offended, less reactive, less defensive, more kindly. So then I can create a world that I'm interested in. A kinder world by owning that I'm also unkind. By taking responsibility for the times that I'm unkind. To be the one that can apologize and make statements of regret and reconciliation and healing that's possible as all of these aspects of ourself are integrated. So I have a little cheat sheet from the workshop yesterday. Those of you that were here, raise your hand yesterday. So you can ask them a little bit about it. So this is why now, what I'm reading from is why people won't let me do their marriage vows anymore. They look very different. How do you vow to love them unconditionally till death do you part? No. Do you vow to love them when you get what you want from them? Yes. Quickly offended. So see if you can do this little inventory for yourself, minus shame and minus guilt. If you could own these pieces this morning, that at times I'm quickly offended. At times I'm quickly offended. Like it even happens before I even know what's happened. At times I am very sensitive to things. Sensitive. You'd even say I'm oversensitive. Like you would ask, where did that come from? Slow to recover. Hold grudges. Keep score. You know what I mean? Yeah. Demanding. In the holy divine way, of course. Willful. Stubborn. Daddy used to say it was my middle name. Her middle name is Stubborn. I was just 2. So it's deeply rooted. It is deeply rooted. If you study this in the mental health professions, this took hold in us at 15 months old. And then on and 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 up. So I have a little 2-year-old great niece. She looks like a mini-me. She's as bossy and high-strung also as me, pointing fingers, bossing people around. And she wants to play hide and go seek. So I hide my eyes, count, she goes to hide. Then it's her turn. She's really into taking turns. So then it's my turn to hide. She hides her eyes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now nobody told her that. It's like, you're cheating. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is instinct. This came with her. And then the second I teach her that that's cheating, what have I put in her? What have I laid up on her? Guilt, shame, BAD. Versus understanding this is part of the human learning processes. This is a part of instinct, part of our evolution. We're just a hair above a snake and a lizard. Well, now this is why, you know what I mean? From the brain scientists, they teach us that we're in this regressive state, and as a society then, therefore, regressed and regressing. If we don't evolve, then we devolve. And evolve, which is why you'd rather be with your dogs and cats than you had to be with people. Because they are more enlightened. They're more evolved than most of us. And then there's this neocortex, this cognition, this big part of our brain that's seldom ever accessed, that has all sorts of innovation possibilities, all sorts of creative possibilities, all sorts of ways to break through this that's seldom ever accessed if we don't integrate these parts and stop some of this snake, lizard, reptilian behavior and then pass that down another generation, 7 more generations, and for 2,000 years, which is how it's been handed down to us. Since recorded history, since creation, this old, archaic, good and bad, good and evil idea handed down. There's this saying that it exists in the whole species. And if I am just a thought away from evil, if I had one thought to murder and couldn't regulate myself, I would murder. So a state of humility and a state of grace that says, only by grace go I. So that's the capacity of us in this evolution, in this evolutionary process. And then to say, there's a committed groups of people like you and like me that believe something else is possible. That's here again and again and again every Sunday, listening, practicing, loosening this up, repenting, aligning, atoning, and doing everything we can to live in a higher state of consciousness instead of a regressed state of consciousness. And it takes some work, the best I can tell, to rewire this. And it's proven that it's wired, that they're firing based on the track we've been running on for 2,000 years. So it's no little thing to jump a track and to lay down a new track. And to jump that track and to lay down, keep rooting in this new track, this new way of being in the world. So, uptight people, serious, defensive, thinking black and white, all or nothing? Sometimes. Now get a sense then of being this. So use this part of your brain, use this part of your thinking capacities, this part of your creative, innovative access, and begin to imagine who you would be living as these things. Aware that you shape your environment. Aware that ever how you present is going to affect the whole. Basic unity. Quantum thinking. So everything I do affects the whole. What it would be like to regulate yourself. Nothing else, nobody else. To regulate self. To know thyself. To live more responsive instead of reactive. To have a pause in there. An ability to respond. Get a sense of that. To be more at ease. More resilient. You're some of the most resilient people on the planet. If anybody else could do this, they'd be in these seats. So you've been called to this. I've been called to this. And therefore you've been equipped for this. There is nothing you've ever had to get through that you couldn't get through. Reality. Now, did you think you couldn't get through it? For sure. And did you get through it? And then some. And then some. So you're not survivors, you're thrivers. I'm not a survivor, I'm a thriver. See if you can say it. I am a thriver. I am a thriver. I'm a part of a thriving energy. I'm a part of thriving things. I'm a part of a thriving evolution, a part of a thriving new world that I'm intentionally creating. A thriving new world that I'm going to hand off a new possibility for the next generations being born. That is true of what you are and who you are. And this center here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, is a very thriving center. So do not be mistaken by the number of people that are here or what's going on here. The fact that you're here this many years later, for 50 years is it? The fact that you've got this many people here, that you had 12 people here for training last night, another 6 or 8 yesterday for 3 hours, 12 people here this morning before the service started to pray in the whole space, and music and youth and ushering and greeting and a potluck and a facility and a yard and an idea about fundraising and responsible action and a minister and a full-time minister and a full-time minister and praying together and eating together and celebrating together and playing together. Those are all the components of thriving ministry. Thriving ministry. So you are that. So be a little careful about getting off into comparison. Because compare equals despair. What happens when you compare yourself to somebody? Compare equals despair. If you compare this ministry to other ministries, it may leave you in despair if you don't look at the whole of the church industry, which reports factually that 80% of churches are stagnant. That leaves 20% that are actually thriving. 20%. So give yourself a round of applause. Give yourself a high five. And stay the course with this. Stay the course with this. Because it's pretty easy to get some despair here and there. So give that despair about a proper 0.01 second. And then brush yourself off. Tell yourself the truth. And remember whose you are. And who you are. And what your calling is. And that you're equipped for that calling. And then create according to your innate power to create. And thrive in alignment with your own nature to thrive. And it will thrive you whether you want it or not. This little book is a gift for you today. So cancel whatever you thought you had to do at 12:30. Cancel it and stay. Glenda called me a mentor. After the workshop, you'll call me a tormentor. And it's my job. So I'm here to take this down. And I'm here to take it down in me. So I naturally want it down in you. Then together we can do what I cannot do alone.
Yes.